Okay, we are going to get started again. I figure some of those stragglers will slowly come back from break. So my name is Lauren Williams. I'm also one of the finance advisors here at GovernWise. I'm located centrally in the province of Ontario, and I reside on Moose Deer Point First Nation with my family. I've been with GovernWise for about 2 years, almost 2 years now here. Prior to that, I was a finance manager for my First Nation for 12 years. And then prior to that, I actually was in public accounting as a staff accountant at BDO. So spent most of my life either working publicly with Indigenous communities or obviously within Indigenous communities, and I have quite a wealth of knowledge that I enjoy to share. So please feel free to ask any questions or come and see us at the back at any time before you leave today. We are going to talk a little bit about the planning, the managing your finances, and then the reporting piece. So we're going to talk about internal reporting, and then we're also going to talk about best practices for ISC reporting. Thank you. So really the foundations of First Nation finance is really essential for your economic self-sustainability, sustainable development, and effective governance in your First Nation communities. It allows you to build and continue to build strong financial futures and maintaining everyday operations smoothly. It allows us also for stability and confidence in our leadership from a membership perspective. So it's really great to ask yourself why it matters. It's always a hot topic at a community meeting with our membership. Finance is always the biggest thing everybody wants to know about. And what role do you play in your communities? So what does it all involve? And again, today we're just talking about 3 pieces. There are always significantly more pieces in the finance world, but it really talks about the planning section and why we do that and why it's important. And it's important for financial management to help you allocate the resources efficiently, managing your day-to-day finances, so ensuring you have good, strong policies and procedures in place. You are also ensuring that you're recording your transactions and you're segregating the duties, especially within your finance department. And then the reporting piece. Obviously, it's crucial to be reporting. It allows for decision-making. It allows for transparency and accountability. And you can understand the financial health of your community when you report. So in this first planning and budgeting section, we're going to look at 4 different pieces, and again, they're here on your screen. We're going to touch a little bit about multi-year financial planning and the importance of that. We're going to talk a tiny bit about integrated planning, and Jen just did her presentation on asset management. Capital planning is a really big part of that. Yearly planning and budgets and work plans and why they're important, that all of your staff do those, and then that they continue to monitor those work plans and their budgets on an ongoing basis. So multi-year financial planning, really what is it? It's a planning tool beyond 1 year. Typically they're done from 3 to 5 years. It allows you to plan for long-term goals and project anything financial. It allows you to both plan and project capital expenditures that you might need to plan for 5 years before you're able to actually purchase those. It allows you to seek funding sources. It allows you to look at risk. I know our friends yesterday, Alan specifically, talked a little bit about risk and performance within your First Nation and within your communities. It's really a foundation, and it allows you to build on your comprehensive community plan and your strategic plan in your nations. It also allows you to properly secure funding and infrastructure, as I mentioned, from a capital perspective. So this is just a little screenshot. Again, I've used this. This is right off the First Nations Financial Management Board website. It's a little sample 5-year multi-year plan. They've used it for, I believe it was a water plant. And it shows really the importance of allocating all of your revenue. It's very hard to see, so I apologize. You will get these resources at the end. But it allows you to lay out your resources in revenue for 5 years, and you can project that very nicely. It allows you to look at your expenses and itemize those, again, year over year, and really a surplus. So if you're looking at a project that you need to fund multiple years and you don't have enough money to do it, a 5-year plan lets you look at it and know where you may need to seek own source revenue or additional funding sources and how you can actually tackle that plan over a longer period of time than one year. In the planning process too, it's really good to have checklists. We love checklists. As the finance team here, Jen mentioned, she likes to make Excel spreadsheets. I like to make the checklists. But it allows you to really determine what you need from each perspective, whether you're long-term planning, you're strategic planning, you're just looking at a one-year budget. So really, really great to have these checklists, and the sample in front of you just shows things that you would need if you were going to do multi-year planning. So things like long-term revenue and expenditures, determining the impacts on the priorities in your First Nation and the goals that you may want to achieve over the 5-year term. Aligning those with your vision statement. Audrey talked about that yesterday with the school bus analogy. You know, what is the vision? What are the rules on the road? You want to ensure when you're doing multi-year planning that you're aligning with the vision of your community, and maybe identifying any unfunded liabilities. The next section is our integrated planning, and really this is a cross-functional approach. This should be taken as a team, and it allows you to align your priorities across the entire organization. It allows you to look at your resources and maybe some of the commitments that you've made and ensure that you've strategically aligned your decision-making to your resources. It allows for transparency, participation, and feedback from your communities, gives you a framework, and it actually gives you results so you can measure those results and see the changes and the success in the future. So why do we do it? It's cost-effective, allows for cost-effective program delivery. That's always a big one. We know that there's never enough funding for our programs to operate in our communities, so ensuring that you're costing things appropriately so that you can have the most amount of programs and services for your members for the best cost. You want to build trust and support with your membership. That's always key. You want them to trust you so that you're accountable and it's transparent. And efficiency, that's always huge. Creating complete budgets and work plans allows for efficiency across all of your departments and your programs. So what this process may look like, and again, this is just a best practice, something that we've put together, but in a strategic plan, you define your objectives and longer-term objectives. As Jen mentioned with asset management and a capital plan, that's a process as well with the toolkit, and it allows you to plan for the capital and the big items that you may need to look for extra funding sources or save for a few years before you can make a capital plan. Department work plans and budgets, this is a big one, ensuring that you have proper templates in place and they're aligning with your strategic vision, and then ensuring that they're actually meeting the goals of both the program and the First Nation, and that these are actually created every single year. Does everybody in the room create a work plan and a budget for your program or your department? And do you revisit that often, or do you create it once, you have it approved by council, and then it sits on your desk or it sits on a shelf and you may or may not look at it again? It's really important that that's a working document and you use it on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. Performance measurements, this is a really big one. How do you know what you're doing if you have nothing to look at and no KPIs or anything to look and see, are you successful? Maybe are you not successful, and should you make some changes? So monitoring that progress is really, really great as well. And then the reporting piece. In order to know what you've done and know that you've spent the money, you have to have a report at the end of the year. So yearly planning, this is something that we do at GovernWise with a lot of our nations. We look at yearly planning with our departments and with departments and First Nations, looking at what the long-term goals of a program or a department might be, ensuring that they align with the vision and the mission statement of the First Nation, and really how can we help to manage those resources over 12 months. So you don't want to look at a work plan or a yearly plan and think, okay, in the first 3 months of the year, I'm gonna have spent all my money and now I'm just not going to do anything for the last 9 months. You want to ensure that you're using those resources across the whole 12 months. And you can prioritize those as well. So there's really 3 steps. You want to look at the long-term planning here, but you also want to plan for your department and then plan for an annual plan. And that's a comprehensive approach to how you do that. It's not one person doing that. Annual planning is your finance team, so that looks at your annual audit and your consolidated budget. Department work plans may be your managers and your program staff, and making that a team project as well. And then long-term planning, strategic planning, multi-year financial planning, capital planning. So really, it's a 6-step collaborative process. It's not a one person or one job. It's got 6 steps. So the first step is your budget plan, and you want to identify key dates. So you want to look at a budget plan maybe in December or January. And that budget plan is just an overall overview of what might be coming up in the next year. You also want to identify who is going to be responsible in the budget plan section. Step 2, departmental work plans. Planning your activities and your goals, making sure it's linked to a vision. That should be done by a department manager, a department supervisor, in collaboration with their program staff. Department budgets, again, same thing. You want to identify the costs of running your department. You want to use a guide. You want to look at all of your financial resources when you do this step. Step 4, your consolidated budget. So again, you're combining all of the numbers. You want to also include operational costs, so things like rent, maybe overhead or administration fees. Those are normally calculated and done by the finance department and given to a department manager, but in that consolidated budget, that's where those things get included. You want to review your budget. So if you're working towards a FAL with First Nations Financial Management Board, you should have a finance and audit committee that's outside of the organization that provides recommendations to your leadership after it's created internally. If you don't have that structure, that's okay. It's not a set in stone thing, but it's a really good advisory committee to have so that they can make recommendations at arm's length to the First Nation, to your leadership. And step 6, a budget approval. This is done by motion. It has to be documented, and it gets approved by Chief and Council. And they want to ensure when they're reviewing it and approving it that it does align with your strategic mission, vision statements, and your strategic plan if you have one. So departmental work plans. Every department should have one. It's crucial. It allows you to create goals and objectives. It allows them to align with the strategic mission. It should be created by your department manager, and it's really a way of showing that you've achieved the goals. Very small sample on screen, so I do apologize. This template is available if you would like it. This is just a sample work plan, and again, it's got several columns in it. The first column is really the organizational or strategic goal. So there should be several of them in the strategic plan. You choose one, and then you can pick programs and projects within that goal in line 2, where you itemize it. Then in column 3, it allows you to determine the tasks and who's responsible, and maybe some of the resources required. So in a work plan, there's actually columns where you can identify potential costs. A timeline, if there is a timeline, especially if it's a project, and maybe some progress, milestones, or results. So you can add statistics right in here so that you're tracking that on a yearly basis. So when it comes to reporting, which we will talk about, you've already got that information. You don't have to go back and try to figure out what did I do, what was successful, what wasn't successful. It's already in your work plan. So again, making this a living, working document for your staff and your department is a really good tool to save on reporting at the end of the year. Department budgets, so you want to look at department budgets and who should be creating them. Should it be a department manager? Should it be your finance staff? It really should be your department manager. And it should, again, reflect your mission statement. You want to look at what things are going to cost, what resources, staffing, materials are you going to need to ensure efficiency in your program. Do you have enough funding? That's always a great question, and usually the answer is no, because we don't have enough funding in our communities. You want to look at the difference between the fixed costs and the variable costs. Maybe you need to reduce some costs, or what other activities may be able to happen if you're looking at a multi-year plan. So if it's not crucial that it happens in year 1, maybe it's something that can happen in year 3. You're still meeting those goals and objectives and aligning with your strategic plan. Again, 2 samples up there on the screen. One is a program budget. So the one on the far side is a program budget. It allows, and again, we have these tools created in Excel, and we're happy to share those with you. It allows you to add in all of your revenue sources and the numbers, and it can consolidate into a department budget, which is the second Excel on my side, which also encompasses all of your operational costs. So an easy tool if you have several programs in one department that you're responsible for. It's all in an Excel workbook, all right here for you. So a good tool to have. It can also mimic, if you work with Sage 50 or Sage 300, it can also mimic that in your system financially so that you can align that with your finance department. Again, department budgets, we look at how managers can create meaningful budgets and meaningful work plans and what that might look like. We talked yesterday a lot about, an organizational structure, and that really ultimately we report to our members and our membership, then to our leadership, then to your band manager, your staff, and your managers. So really you want to look at how you can empower your managers to take ownership of their budgets and make them meaningful documents. Managing their resources and tracking their performance. So ensuring that you've got these in place is a really, really good tool. In the managing finances section, again, this is not the most sexy topic. Managing your finances, ensuring that you're delegating responsibilities, you have proper signing authority and approval process, and making sure that you understand the difference between those two, because there is a difference in those two. So you have to keep a financial record for 7 years for tracking purposes, and so that you can show your membership where the money is being spent. Proper management allows First Nations to afford those goals and objectives. So again, like I just mentioned, you want to ensure that you understand who has the authority to spend and borrow on behalf of the First Nation, and are these very clear in your policies. So does everybody in the room have a current up-to-date financial policy for your First Nation? Yes, no, yes. Raise your hands if you have an up-to-date current policy and you use that policy and you know what that policy says. Yeah, there's some hands up in the nation. Good. So do you know who can authorize day-to-day operating expenses like payroll and purchases in your nation? Is that very clear to you and your staff? Do you have a policy, and in that policy, does it very clearly identify those authority levels? Maybe it's in a delegation table. Those are common. Do your employees have a clear understanding of who has the authority to make these decisions, or do they just go to whomever they can find for a signature? It's really, really important to communicate that with your employees. And a First Nation will run efficiently if employees know who has the authority to do what and when, rather than just going to look for the chief because it's the only person in the building. No, there should be proper process, and it should be very clearly communicated to your staff. So ultimately, leadership is responsible for having your policies and procedures in place. I believe our friend Alan mentioned that yesterday. And again, like I mentioned, it needs to outline these authority levels and who and how spending can be approved. It also needs to ensure that it has the following in place. It must follow your budget, your approved budget, as noted in minutes by Chief and Council. It must have limits in place. So a program staff member might not be able to have any authority to approve anything. Your department manager may be able to approve something up to $1,000, let's say, for example. Your band manager may be $5,000, and anything over that requires leadership. So ensuring that there is actual proper authority levels in place and they're clearly communicated is definitely something that the policy must have. And again, authorizing a purchase and authorizing expenditure are not the same thing. This is just a sample delegation table. Again, it was created offline, and could be something that you may want to add into your policy. It allows for different sections, so approval of extraordinary expenditures, who would be involved, and up to what amount of money. It's a really good thing to have, and it's a good thing to share to ensure that your staff know exactly who has the authority to do what and to approve what. So again, I talk about signing authorities and that these are not the same thing. So who in the room knows the difference between approving an expense and having signing authority? Yes? Yes? No? Yes? I've got some hands, a lot of no hands at all. So really a supervisor or a manager, when it comes to approving expenses, would review the request, so the purchase order if you use purchase orders. If you don't, whatever that process looks like. They want to determine if that purchase aligns with the work plan and the budget, and you want to ensure that your staff are showing that when they're bringing it forward to permit the expenditure. They'll then decide, yes, I will approve it, or no, I will not, and making sure that it's documented. Large requests, as long as you have that clearly identified, should be forwarded to leadership for consideration. And when we say large, significant purchases that maybe are not included in your policy. Signing authority is something different. So obviously, signing authority, you think signing a check, that's the easiest way to look at it. Actually signing the payment. So maybe signing a printed check, like I mentioned, approving an EFT payment file. Only the person that is authorized to sign the check, two signatures, excuse me, should be signing the check. The person that approved the expenditure should not be signing the check. The person that created the check should also not be signing the same check. So ensuring that you have that very clear understanding. Does everybody in the room have 2 signing authorities required on all payments? 3, some are 3 over here, yes. I think that's a very standard thing, and a bank won't actually let you have anything different now. What about EFT payments? I know it's really easy to send an EFT file to the bank and only one person does that and that's that, but does anybody in the room have a process where it requires multiple people to approve that? Yeah, Constance Lake, yes, in the back, good, good. So really good controls in place, that's really nice to see. So spending obviously has to be in accordance with your policies and your procedures and following those authorized spending limits. You also should have accompanying supporting documentation on your payment requisition. And that accompanying document should also have signatures on it of those people that are approving the payment. So really good, that's a best practice, that's standard controls, that's really something that you should consider if you're not currently doing. And like I mentioned, you can't approve your own expense claim. That's a no-no. So you can't submit an expense claim as a band manager and approve your own expense claim and then push it through. You really should ensure that somebody else is approving those at all times and that the person approving the expense is not the person signing the check. So why is it important to do these things? Why is it important to record expenses and do it by a program or a department? It allows each program to track their own expenditures. So it's empowering your staff to take a look at their own budgets, track their own expenditures, compare it to their financials, and know that they're on track. Making decisions in a program. So maybe they've determined that something's not a feasible activity to continue. They can make that decision based on the information that they have. Following their work plans and their budgets, this is key. Revisiting those on a monthly basis, we advise. And then creating accurate financial reports. So when you look at reporting to your manager, you look at reporting to chief and council, and then you look at reporting to your funding people, making sure that those are accurate. So a very clear segregation of duties. Who in the room has a very clear segregation of duties, specifically in your finance department? So somebody that's reconciling a bank rec maybe is not approving payments, or do you have very clear lines of authority and who does what and you're not duplicating? Yes, there's some nods, there's some hands, yes. Does anybody just have one finance person in their nation who does it all? So then how do you navigate that world? I see another hand over there, right? How do you navigate the controls that are in place and what are you doing to ensure that things aren't being missed and that sort of thing? Do you have eyes on your finance? Yes? Okay, awesome. So it's hard when you only have one person and you're the only person doing it. You really should take a look at that and see if there's other controls we can help if you need to in place to ensure that somebody else is always reviewing that work so it's not always on that one individual. That happens often in especially in small communities. There's only one person doing all of the work. So then we look at reporting and the dreaded reporting that a lot of people don't like to do, and because of COVID, everybody got behind on. So because nations are required to keep a financial record for tracking purposes, it allows you to show where the money is going, it allows for proper management of the funds, and it allows you to afford your goals and objectives within a community. It's a great tool to measure, not only measure a program, but to measure the effectiveness of your employees, the effectiveness of your programs, and the effectiveness of your departments. So the reporting accountability in this nice little circle graph kind of goes up. Staff are required to report to their managers. Managers are required to report to chief and council. Chief and council are required to report to the community, and vice versa, really. Should be the community saying, this is what we want to see, and then that trickling down. So it's kind of a nice big picture when we're looking at the reporting process. Internally, monthly reports should be done by each department and provided to your band manager, CEO, executive director, whatever you call that person in your community. And that's just a quick recap of what the projects and the programs have done every single month, if not monthly, quarterly at a bare minimum. And again, allows you to make adjustments and align with your strategic vision on an ongoing basis. Your senior finance officer should prepare monthly, quarterly, and annual reports to your leadership. And they should have a wealth of information in them, but at a minimum, it allows you to look at the health of your First Nation on an ongoing basis and make changes promptly, not at the end of the year when you've realized you've spent 3 times the amount of money that you had, and what are we going to do? Again, documentation is key, so Chief and Council must approve yearly audited financial statements. They must be recorded in your minutes, and they must appoint your auditor every single year. It's so crucial that those are in your minutes and that those are documented. And even from a finance level, ensuring that you have a copy of that documentation so that you've got it in your own department. So there's 4 key groups here. The Finance and Audit Committee, really we talked about that just quickly. They're an arm's length committee. They only make recommendations, they do not make decisions, but they review monthly reports, they would review quarterly financial reports, and they would make recommendations to your leadership. Leadership, obviously, you want all of the updates that you can have to keep yourselves informed about the health and wellness of your community. And then you can adjust and assess, maybe some of the risks and the health of the First Nation on an ongoing basis. Your finance department, you want to ensure that they're up to date and current. I know that the COVID pandemic got a lot of our communities behind and are still struggling behind. Audits are behind, reporting is behind, everything is behind. We see that every single day, govern-wise. But ensuring that you have some sort of a monthly process and a quarterly process as your finance officers to keep your departments on top of their expenses and recording those expenses. And managers, you want to identify budget variances. So if you're not doing variance reports in your community, you want to look at maybe implementing those so you can see the changes and where you can make adjustments as needed. Again, it allows you to assess and achieve your goals efficiently. So when I talk about variance reports, it allows you to determine if you've over or underspent. It also tells a really big story. So it allows you to correct your discrepancies or, maybe do more. So again, a positive variance just means that when spending is less than budgeted, you may need to look at costs were lower so that you can provide a report to your department manager or your band manager. You may be able to add a different program into that if you have maybe not funded the amount of, or maybe not have had the amount of expenditures in a program. A negative variance is obviously the opposite thing. You've spent too much money. So what are you going to do? What are you going to reduce so that your budget stays on track and you don't overspend in your department? So again, ensuring that your finance team is sending these reports to your department managers every single month. Is that happening in your communities? Is your finance team providing monthly reports to your department managers? Yes. There's a lot of no hands, no shaking, no nothing. That's a best practice tool. It allows your departments to really know their variance reports. So a quarterly financial report to Chief and Council should look like the following. It should have a balance sheet. You should know where the money in the bank is. Any other relevant information that may be requested prior to their meeting. Reconciliations of all of your financial assets. That is important. You need to know what your bank balances are on an ongoing basis, maybe your investments. And a budget versus actual or a profit loss statement. You want to know the big picture in order to make informed decisions. This, again, should be done within 30 to 60 days of the end of that quarter if you're following best practices. And then an annual report. So Chief and Council should be doing some sort of an annual report to membership. We've seen in some communities they do an AGM celebration and they actually celebrate the success over the weekend. They have their departments come and have booths and showcase everything that's done, and they make it a celebration as opposed to a negative thing. Sometimes when you're looking at audited financial statements and money, it's always a hot topic of a meeting. So making it a success and making it a celebration is one way we've seen it and seen it successful, and looking at their goals and the operations overall. The financial report obviously is your audit. It's created by your finance department. Your audit comes in, it looks at reasonable assurance. It then sends your draft financial statements to your finance and audit committee for review and recommendations to Chief and Council, and then obviously a documented Chief and Council approval, which should be done in theory by July 31st of every single year and submitted to ISC. So on that note, and talking about ISC, we have created a ISC best practices for reporting. Doesn't have to just go to ISC reporting. It's actually just a really great tool set that you can use for any reporting. We've created it specifically for ISC though, so I am going to take you through that as well. So if you're familiar with ISC reporting, then you're familiar with this lovely PDF on screen. It is a DCI report. There are hundreds of them that are required every single year for each First Nation. So most of your First Nation funding does come from ISC with a requirement for annual reporting on your expenditures. It is really the only way ISC will determine if your money has been spent, and it allows you as a nation to demonstrate where you may need more money. So if you don't tell them in a report every single year where your money's been spent, they have no idea that they're not giving you enough. You have to tell them your story and paint that picture for them. In 2020, with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, most of us closed. We didn't work for a while. Our communities shut down to keep everyone safe. When those halts were released at that point. So if you had any pending halts for non-reporting, they were released to you. All of that funding flowed, and it flowed for 2 years until the end of 2022. In 2022, when everything started to somewhat stabilize, offices started to reopen. ISC determined that they needed to implement those halts again, because the only way that they know that the money's being spent is by reporting. So since then, if you have outstanding reports from ISC, you may be seeing some halts on your NOR report, which we'll get into. But those have been reinstated, and those are a real thing now. We at GovernWise have created a simple approach. It's an 8-step approach. It's really effective in completing ISC reports in a timely manner so that you don't run into potential delays or funding halts. One thing to note, many of your ISC reports are not just financial reports, so they shouldn't just be given to your band manager, your finance manager. They do them, they submit them, that's it. There's a significant amount of non-financial data required and a narrative required on a lot of these reports. So it's really great that a collaborative team approach is taken when you're doing reporting so that the staff and the department managers can tell their story in the narrative section. If you don't submit reports to ISC, like I mentioned, this really can be tailored to any funding agency. So reports allow you to tell the story, and that's the biggest picture here. Again, if you don't tell them your story, you have no ability to show that you need more money. Submitting accurate and comprehensive reports is the only way that you do that, and ensuring that if they're tied to a funding driver, so for example, membership or education, capital assets, for example, those are funding drivers. So if reports in those areas are not submitted, you're not actually optimizing the amount of funding that you should be receiving from ISC. So the most common things that we hear when we come in and start helping communities is, I didn't know I had to do it. I don't have the time to do it. Time is the biggest thing. I don't have the template, or I can't get the template, and I don't have the information I need or potentially that I trust. So our 8-step model, I'm not going to rhyme these out because I am going to go through them in detail, but it's a very simple 8-step process to implement into your communities to get these done and get these done on a timely manner. So step 1, identifying the responsible individuals. It's imperative that you communicate who is responsible for completing which reports and when. It's equally important that your staff know that they're responsible for completing these reports. So ways that you can do that, you can include the reporting responsibility right in a job description. You can include reporting tasks and due dates in your annual work plan. And you can include reporting performance in an annual employee performance review. So again, 3 really great ways that you can ensure that your staff know that they're responsible and that it's going to be done within a due date time. Step number 2, identifying the program, the DCI report, and the reporting dates. So the first sample here is from a funding approval letter that you normally will get once you've had an approval of funding. It shows you exactly the amount of funding that you're receiving for a specific program. It tells you the details and the DCIs that are due with this amount of funding. Another place to look, your funding arrangement. So if you're not seeing copies of your funding arrangements as employees expected to do reports, you should be, and you should talk to your band manager, your finance manager. It's important that all of the information is shared with their staff so they know where to find their DCIs, where to find their funding information, and when their reports are due. And a funding arrangement is another place that that can be provided. Step number 3, scheduling this. And this can be as simple as scheduling it in your Outlook calendar. Most of us use emails every single day. They're on your phones. They're on your hips. They're with you at all times. Scheduling something into an Outlook calendar in advance of the due date allows you to set that reminder. It also allows you to invite all of the relevant people that you need to complete the report. So if you need finance and you maybe need a program officer and a department manager and maybe a band manager, scheduling this ahead of time allows everyone more than enough time to set aside 30 minutes to get the report completed. Downloading the DCI template, that's the next one. So there are several places that you can find your DCI templates. The first one obviously is the ISC website. They only have a couple of current years on the website, so if you need older DCIs and you're very behind on reporting, you can find those at our website or you can reach out to any one of us. We've spent the last couple of years collecting all of these DCIs as we've been working with communities, so we have quite a database dating back to 16, 17. So lots of places to find those things. You can also just reach out to your funding services officer or team or a program manager, and they would be happy to send that information to you as well. Step number 4, you want to download the DCI template. So we recommend, as a best practice, you download the template and you actually save 3 copies. You save a working copy that you're going to work on throughout the year. You save a template in case something happens to your working copy and you've got the template. And then when you're finished, you save a final draft that you end up actually sending uphill for approval prior to submission to ISC. You want to ensure in step 5 that you review the instructions and fill in your preliminary data. There's been significant turnover since the COVID pandemic in staff and communities. So there's a lot of new staff coming in and into roles, and they've never even seen an ISC report before. So the first place to look, if you're given a report and you have no idea what you're doing, click the little blue view instructions on the top of the DCI report. It will blow out all of the instructions on all of the information required in your DCI, and a good starting point to know where you may need to go to look for some of that information. Step number 6, you want to design a departmental report. So you want to, again, work with your finance team. You want to develop a departmental variance report that aligns with the report that you're required to do for ISC. You want to ensure that you're using only the official approved financial report that comes out of your finance system. So you don't want to use, your Excel document that you've been tracking on your own computer throughout the year. You want to ensure that your document comes directly from your finance software. And we say this because if your report does not agree to your audit, usually the audit is later to be submitted than the report. If that doesn't agree, ISC will flag that and you will be required to submit revisions. So it's always important that you ensure that your numbers come directly from your finance department and your finance software system. Step number 7, you want to update this DCI draft, and we recommend that you do it quarterly. If you've created a departmental report, so on the far side of the screen there, that's just a sample from a SAGE 300 program. It's a variance report. So they have current year-to-date expenditures, they have their current yearly budget, and in the third column is a variance report. So if you've got something like this already created in your software system, it's very easy to just grab an amount of money and stick it into the DCI every quarter. You update that quarterly quarterly, and then at the end of the year, your report is done. It's very, very simple. It saves you lots of time. So it's really great that you could update this on a quarterly basis. Step number 8, obviously you want to complete your draft report. And as I mentioned, you want to forward that uphill. So either to your finance manager, your band manager, whoever is reviewing and approving these DCIs prior to submission. They should also be sent by one person and one central person, so that it ensures that it is being sent. It's being sent to the proper reporting portal. So if you're in Manitoba, your email is slightly different than the one in Ontario, but that you're also including your funding services team, your department managers, your program officers, everybody who needs to know that that report has been submitted, ensuring that they're copied in on that email. So again, like I mentioned, some best practices. If you're in Ontario, the report email is there on screen. If you're in Manitoba, it is a little bit different, and we can get that for you if you need it. But all of the completed reports should be submitted to an email portal, and again, on the screen. But you want to ensure that you're also including your First Nation recipient number, the name, the DCI, and the year number of the report that you're submitting, the due date of your report, and copying the important information. So your finance service officers team, they're probably the most important people that you should be copying on these submissions of these reports, simply because they're there to advocate for you. They're there to ensure that the report is received, the report is accepted, reviewed, and then comes off your no report. So again, making sure that you're including the applicable people. Reconciling your report. So on the screen here is a copy of a NOR. Most of you, I assume, have seen a copy of your NOR statement. If you're responsible for reporting, you should be seeing this every single month from your band manager or your finance department. It's really important, once you get this report, that you reconcile this report. You want to look at the upcoming and the submitted reports to your monthly NOR. You know what you've submitted, you know what you still have outstanding based on this NOR. And if there are any discrepancies, it allows you to pick those up promptly. Once you've picked those up, you want to communicate those concerns with your FSO. Again, they're the people that are there to advocate for you and to ensure that those reports are being accepted and received by the department. So if there are irregularities, communicate that, and communicate that promptly. You want to update these. So these NOR reports change every single month. There are more reports added usually. Some reports, once they're received, they come off. So updating this every single month, adding it into your calendar so that you know what's coming, and document it. It's always important that you document all of your actions. So some tips for GSIMS users. GSIMS, does anybody know what GSIMS stands for in the room? The Grants, Contributions, Information Management System. That's the wonderful portal that ISC has developed. That's not a user-friendly tool, but once you're in there, it is excellent. Sorry, Melissa, I'm throwing you over there. Not a user-friendly tool by any means, but it is a great tool once you have a login and you use it frequently. You can pull so much information right out of the system. It is wonderful. It's very hard to navigate, though. You can also generate your own NOR once you have access to GSIMS. So again, a little sample on the screen here. It just shows you all of the criteria that you need in order to generate a NOR for your own community once you have that access. Some other things in there, you can actually create your own reporting calendar. So once you download a NOR from GSIMS, we also do this for all of the communities that we work with. We flip your NOR into Excel. We create a nice little sorting tool. We color code it depending on what we're doing and what First Nations. But it also allows us to track what's due, what we maybe want to prioritize. Some communities want to prioritize old reports. Some communities want to get the current reports out. But again, a really good tracking tool for your staff. You can also sort it by department. So if you only need the infrastructure team to see their reports, you can eliminate all the rest of the reports in Excel and send it just off to your infrastructure team, for example. So if you're not on GSIMS yet, we have copies of the Schedule A. We can send you one. You can fill those out, have it approved by your band manager or your chief, and send those off to your funding services team and get access to the GSIMS portal. It does take a couple of weeks in a turnaround right now. It's not like it was a couple of years ago. It was a significant amount of time. But again, it allows you to have access to this portal and all of the great information that are in there. You can tailor it as well. So if you're a department manager and you're only responsible for one department, you could just get access to that department only. Whereas if you're a band manager and you need to see everything from funding agreements to NORs to funding approval letters, you can have access to everything. So again, tailored to the needs of the community and the needs of the individual.